Selamat pagi Radio Kim, Inspirasi Info Islami. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sahabat-sahabat semua, macam kita maklumkan tadi, kita dah masuk ke topik pagi kita untuk edisi hari Isnin ini.
Ya, dan Alhamdulillah we have a very special interview with our guest of honor all the way from the United States of America for his visit to Malaysia. And we have our honorable Professor Dr. Ebrahim Moosa from Mirza family. He's the Mirza Family Professor of Keough School of Global Affairs, University of Notre, USA.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi.
Thank
you for having me.
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, very well.
Thank you for joining us. How do you find Malaysia, after all?
Malaysia is always beautiful, warm, and welcoming.
Ahlan wa sahlan.
So today our topic will be Effect, Technology and FATWAS, Theology, Law and the Person.
And we are sure that this is your forte, especially in research in this field of knowledge. And to open our discussion with, what do you think? How does theology addresses greater questions concerning the nature of God, the purpose of life, and the moral precepts that govern moral behavior and society as a guide to Islamic thought?
The introduction of this interview, please, sir.
Yes, thank you. So the idea of affect. Affect means how one feels. What is the impact of a certain thing? So you use a computer. You previously used to take a pen and you start writing, right? And the pen make you write. But nowadays, most of us we are not using pens. We begin to think when we put our fingers on the computer, right? So there's a relationship between our bodies and the technologies that we are using, right? That's called affect. But affect is also when you get angry, when you are happy, how you feel emotions. That's called affect. And technology has got a lot to do with it. If the air conditioning is not on in this room, our experience is going to be very different, right? Because there's a warm outside, and the question of fatwas, that is knowledge, moral guidance, and so on, are the issues that we are looking for. And how does that have an impact on? And how does Islamic law and the question of the human being frame in that? So your question was about the role of theology. The role of theology is God talk. In other words, what is our meaning? What is the meaning of God in our lives? Right. That is what the work that theology does. And theology talks to people living in the world. So theology is basically a conversation about people, God, and people in the world in which they are living. Now, the world in which we live keeps on changing.
Yes, true.
And therefore, theology also has to give explanations of what is that change, and how is God now presented, and how is God understood, and how do we relate to God in a changed world. When people, for instance, lived in the deep forests of, say, Indonesia, Sumatra, or in Sub-Saharan Africa or North America, that life experience is very different from a life experience in living in an urban city.
True.
So the way you perceive God living in clear nature, you're looking at trees, you see birds fly, they're making noises. There's a particular relationship. When you're in the city, there are buses and cars and planes moving, right? You hear different kinds of sounds. What is that relationship? How do you perceive God now? You get up in the morning, you go to work, you have a 7-hour, 6-hour work day, and so on. So all these issues, but then there's the bigger question about what theology tries to explain is, look, the way we understood the world 1,000 years ago, we thought that the earth is the center of the universe. 300-400 years ago, we began to discover that no, we are just one part. It is not a geocentric world, but it's a heliocentric world. The sun, everything spins around the sun. So now we need to begin to rethink theology. So that's exactly what theology does, is to make us understand our place in the world. The second question you asked, to chop up your questions, the second question that you ask is the question of the purpose of life, right? So the purpose of life, Scripture, Quran, the Sunnah, the teachings of the Prophet alayhi salam, but also what Muslims thought over time about the teachings of Islam, all that tried to craft a story about the purpose of life, right? What that is. So normally we talk about the purpose of life is that God didn't create humans and jinn, but to worship God, to adore God, right? But to adore God is the purpose. But adoring God also means you have to live in this world, and you must make it possible that you can eat and drink and sleep and rest and all those things that you need in order to adore God, to worship God. There are other things that you have to do in order to free yourself for the worship of God. So you need to have an economy, you need to have a political system, you need to have, a clean air, you need to have an environmental situation and so on. So that purpose, the purpose of life is not unrelated. The purpose of religion or the purpose of life is not unrelated to the making of life, to the creation of civilization, of a lived environment. So that's your second question. Your third question was about moral precepts. So when you worship God, you don't only worship God, but you must also have a way in which you are living with God's creatures. You can't harm God's creatures, whether it's human or animal, or whether it's the environment. So you then develop rules and regulations to govern your moral precepts. So as I said, if you lived in a forest, the rules and regulations are going to be very different from when you live in a city. When you lived 1,000 years ago, there were different kinds of experiences. 1,400 years later, there are different kinds of experiences. So moral precepts change. What is the major thing in moral precepts? Do the good. Al-khair.
Yeah, good deeds.
Doing the good, okay? The ma'ruf, doing the good, doing the khair, okay? That's the key things that Islam tell you about. How to do the good changes in different times and places. Changes in different parts. Because the good is objective, but the means of doing the good is always changes, okay? So maybe, 500, 800 years ago, people thought the good is to treat your slave kindly.
Different than today, nowadays.
500 years ago, the good is we don't like slavery. We don't want slavery back again, right? So these are the ways in things change. When we thought about 800 years ago, patriarchy was rife. Women had a particular role in a space, but you treat her kindly. Now kindness means that men and women want to be seen as viewed as equal in their value of each other. They can maybe have different functions and so on, but they want to be valued equally, right? That's a new thing. So how the idea of the good changes. And you cannot say that you are better than those people before. That's a big mistake. Moral precepts mean, and every time and place, people are doing their best to understand the good. And we as later should not judge others. That judgment that we are better. Sometimes that is a big problem that we find. And so Islamic thought teaches us how to understand those questions in different times and places.
Okay, nicely crafted, Professor. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The word ijtihad, Prof,
Yes.
Could be applied in the modern days today to tackle the current situation, current problems that we have, and obstacles. How do you see, in what ways could we notion the word of ijtihad within the context of Islam? Prof?
Look, there's been some controversy about the word ijtihad. Ijtihad means to do intellectual effort, to think hard. So there is some people who say, ijtihad is only for certain people with certain kind of qualifications. Yes, no one wants unqualified person to engage in thinking. You must have the requisite skills, you must have the qualifications, you must also have the vision. But the biggest challenge that we have today among Muslims all over the world is everybody says, yes, we have the ijtihad to do thinking, but the things of which we are thinking, we don't have that. The big problem that we have is that we only think that the knowledge that has been passed down in our tradition, that is the only knowledge that we can use to do new ijtihad. And I'm saying no. our biggest problem is that knowledge has been created outside of Muslim societies. The last 400 years has been Europe and America created huge amounts of knowledge about the world, from science, sociology, humanity, anthropology, the human sciences, the social sciences, the humanities, science, and all. That all must be part of a mujtahid's toolkit. And you do not require permission from anybody to tell you that you can use that knowledge. Our problem is that every time we are looking for someone to give you a fatwa, whether you can use Weber, or whether you can think like with Kant, or whether you can take an idea from Hegel, that is not smart. People who think like that will never get the license in my book to do ijtihad. Ijtihad means that you must be open to all kinds of knowledge. That's what our ancestors did. How did Muslims become great in the Umayyads? They didn't say, should we translate the books of the Greeks into Arabic? They said, we must translate the books of the Greeks into Arabic. And we must read those books. See what I'm saying? You said, oh, these are the Greeks, these are infidels. They didn't say that. Most of the Greeks they worship different deities. And they never said that, oh, that knowledge is tarnished with their polytheism. They said, these are smart people. We want to learn from smart people. And that's how they became smart. And they mixed it up in their own way. What problem that we have, Muslims are afraid of learning and knowledge. And especially those Muslims who are in charge of our religious learning. They absolutely, either the systems where they study deprive them of studying modern knowledge, or they are so scared and intimidated by some people that they shouldn't touch contemporary knowledge, with the result that our solutions, the ijtihad solutions, are very, very impoverished. The ijtihad is impoverished. So oftentimes I say that we talk about ijtihad, but it's like putting some stones in a Coke can and just making a lot of noise, but there's no delivery. So we have basically Coke cans with stones in it, a lot of noise, but no delivery. Okay, and that delivery can only happen when we are fully equipped to understand. How can you do ijtihad about education when you're not going to study the varieties of educational philosophies, the psychology of education that has been done and produced by people of different kinds of cultural and religious backgrounds? That is your, according to the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min fa'aynama wajaduha fahuwa ahaqqu biha. That wisdom is the lost treasure of the believer. Wherever he or she finds it, they are the most entitled to it. But we say no, wisdom, so long as that wisdom is from a Muslim origin, only then we take it. That is not smart. So one of the things that we need to do is learn smartology. Okay? And stop doing stupidology. Okay? So, we have sociology, anthropology, psychology. That's what we do. Don't do stupidology. That's my key word. That's my take home. We should stop doing things that are unintelligent and things that are not beneficial. Okay, and so that's a critical thing. So therefore, all our ijtihadi issues are not really delivering. We're not delivering because you only want to read what I call the yellow pages, the old books, but you don't want to read the new books that understand, as if knowledge can be segregated. So we're creating knowledge apartheid. We're creating knowledge segregation. And that has been detrimental to us, damaging. So, in other words, we're making progress in engineering, in science, and other areas. But what is the area that is most in need of a huge boost and energy? Islamic thought. And that is because in Islamic thought, we're just not opening ourselves up to new possibilities. So hence, we can make a lot of noise about ijtihad, but there's no delivery.
It doesn't work well if we just mingle around with finding the best solution, especially from ijtihad, and how does it work,
right?
Especially in our life.
So oftentimes our mindset is that we want to find something that Ghazali said, or something that Farabi said. Then we say, oh, okay. No, their world was different. They would tell us, are you out of your mind? to thinking that we can give you solutions in the past. But why we study the past, the reason we study the past is to show how creative they were. And what they give us the license is that you can be creative in your time. That's the reason we study history or ideas of how human creativity happened. And therefore, it gives you the license. And we must be able to take risks. We must be able to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you correct it. Thought doesn't get solved in one day. And don't be afraid. Because in our tradition, we have a saying, Al-Mushtahidu idha ijtahada fa-asaba lahu ajran wa in akhta falahu ajrun wahid. That the Mushtahid, anybody who does a good faith attempt to understand things, to find an answer, if they get it right, they get 2 rewards. If they get it wrong, they get one reward. It's a win-win situation. It's a win-win. Nobody in human history gives you those rewards that says, just make your best effort. That's all we want from you. But the best effort means that you must have the right toolkit. And I think we don't have the right toolkit because we have certain attitudes, the segregation of knowledge and learning that we have created.
Oh, inshallah, and hopefully the ijtihad, the best ijtihad would bring more benefits to the ummah.
Of course,
and
of
people,
course, exactly.
Especially nowadays nowadays challenges
Exactly.
and challenging life.
Yes.
And previously you created an online learning program and curriculum for young Orthodox seminaries in India that combining modern and classical knowledge and knowledge tradition. And this, what is it all about, and how does this related to our religious beliefs for both short and long term? Really?
Thank you. This is possibly what I am most excited about is the program I developed at the University of Notre Dame called Madrasa Discourses.
Madrasa Discourses.
Madrasa Discourses. And you can go to the website at contendingmodernities.nd.edu. That's where you're going to find a lot of materials of what we've done, lectures and so on. People should free to go to Contending Modernities at the University of Notre Dame and look at, there's various resources that we are making available to anybody around the world. And what basically that is, that we are trying to, I'm a graduate of the madrasas of India. And I've been through, traditional education and so on. And what colleagues of mine in India reminded me is that the experience I had of both studying in a madrasa, studying at universities, working in Muslim societies in South Africa, my country of my birth, engaged in political struggle, trying to find, an Islamic solution to questions of justice, democracy, freedom, and those kind of issues, that shaped me in certain ways. So what we do in Madrasa Discourses is the first round of training was about scientific literacy and theological education. Because many madrasa students don't have an understanding of how does the modern world work and what is the role of science. They're always intimidated by science. So we teach them cosmology, we teach them, the questions about modern science, the big issues, evolution, the Big Bang, those big questions on which our science is hanging on today. And then we take them back to the theological texts that they study in the madrasas. We take them back to fiqh, we take them back to usul, we take them back to ilmu kalam, we take them back to, the varieties of disciplines in Islamic thought to show them that there are resources to think through these issues. So with new set of lenses, you see, you can read a text, but you don't have good eyeglasses. You can't see much. But when you study new things, you begin to look for new things. So that's how we believe that the idea to re-energize our engagement with tradition. One of my biggest complaints is that we as Muslims are losing out on the complex Islamic literacy we had in the past. We have become very simplistic. We just want to find a verse of the Quran and some hadith and then want to run with that. When early Muslims did it, they said, no, what is knowledge in entirety? How does this verse make us understand knowledge? How does knowledge make us understand this verse in a greater ways? If you read Fakhruddin al-Razi, a 14th century scholar, Fakhruddin al-Razi, when he does the tafsir of the Quran, he raises a dozen questions of every verse first. A lot of doubts. He says, Shubha number 1, Shubha number 2, Shubha number 4. And he raises questions. Then he begins to answer that means that there was creativity, there was questions of inquiry. You see, you can't have inquiry without that. So the key thing here is what we need to do, what my Madrasa Discourses program is doing, is to make Muslims inquisitive. What we call knowledge virtues, epistemological virtues. Epistemological virtues means the ability to make inquiries, to be just, to be fair in your inquiries, to have curiosity. You see, those are the key things that we require. And Alhamdulillah, I can tell you that the people who have gone through our program are doing great work there now. And these people are smart. They know very good Arabic, they know very good Urdu, they know very good Persian, they know the classical literature. All they need is a little bit of help to make them understand what this world is about, and they on autopilot. And they will do creative things. There's no need to indoctrinate them in one view. All you need to do for young Muslims today, give them the opportunities, especially the ulama, give them the skills to broaden their abilities. They will be on autopilot and they will do the things that they have to do. Don't treat young learned scholars that they require to always be curated in a and keep them under control.
Okay.
Give them the freedom to think.
Freedom of to think.
Okay. Don't infantilize them. Because they can think and they will think in different ways. And the key thing is we have to think in diverse ways, not only think in one way. Diversity of thinking is the requirement for the ummah today. Because out of that, and I always say that for me, the go-to thing that persuaded me about diversity is a very beautiful verse in Surah Nahl. وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ, that your Lord inspired the bee. What does it say to the bee? That make a home in every mountain, in every trellis, in every tree, right? And then it tells the bee, then you must then take from all the fruits in the gardens. And then it says, فَاسْلُكِي سُبَلَ رَبِّكِ ظُلَلًا, then humbly walk in the path of your Lord. يَخْرُجُ مِنْ بُطُونِهَا شَرَابٌ مُخْتَلِفٌ أَلْوَانُ, then comes out of the belly of this bee a beverage of diverse colors. فِيهِ شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ, in that is a remedy for humanity. Most people think that the idea, the shifa is honey. Honey has all these of course, honey is great, but honey can also be dangerous to a diabetic. You can't get, right?
Yes, that's control.
But the key of the analogy there, this shifa'un linnas, is this work that the bee did. And that this bee took from different places. And the product is diverse. So diversity and complexity is not antithetical to Muslim thinking. Okay? And I just quoted the verse not to use Quranic verses to persuade you, but to tell you how Quranic verses have told us this long time ago. And early Muslims understood that. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And we need to be open. We should not be dogmatic. Dogmatism is killing this ummah.
Okay. All right.
So, inshallah,
Thank
we
you
hope
very
that
much,
from
Prof.
this noble effort, from the initiative of this what we call online learning program and this madrasa, what is it called?
Madrasa Discourse.
Madrasa Discourse. You may browse, our fellow listeners can browse the website contending modernities.nd.edu to know further more about this discourse.
Prof, what steps can be taken to address the issue of how religious extremism and fundamentalism are spreading in relation to developing technology?
So, what steps can be taken to address the issues of religious extremism and fundamentalism? By investing more in Islamic thought. That's the first thing. We need to spend huge amounts of money, all the creativity in educating Muslims about Islam in a complex way, not simplex way. The problem is that young Muslims see big problems around the world, they get frustrated, but they don't have the learning and knowledge and the wisdom. And what we are doing in our educational institutions, that we are giving young Muslims Islam dogmatically. We're not giving them Islam discursively. In other words, what does discursively mean? Islam as a knowledge tradition. We're not equipping them with knowledge, with thinking capacities. So with the result, he's frustrated and he wants to do something dangerous. because he doesn't have answers of how to deal, that the frustration cannot be solved by shooting or killing or hurting anybody, but you have to build solutions, and building solutions take long term. And the way that young Muslim was taught was in the dogmatic way, because he was taught, that you have to change things with your hand. But change things with your hand means you must read books. It doesn't mean you have to take a gun and shoot people. And you are told that you must change things with your hand, or you must talk about it, or you must feel bad about it. When you feel bad about something, do something. Go read a book. Try and find a solution. But going on to and listening to other extremists who are going to risk your life and tell you to go and do something against the rules of the society, you're going to just end yourself up as someone who injures himself, either go to jail or you're going to lose your life and your family is going to suffer, and you've been unwise. So the new technologies are giving things to people in very short bites, but it's not full of wisdom. It's full of anger. It's full of frustration. And therefore, those people who are managing our online programs, those people who are giving people through social media, must give them good solutions. Make them, you see, part of the problem is that social media makes people lazy. So they want solutions, but they don't want to think. So social media reinforces the laziness. What we need to have in our social media strategy is, how do we provoke people to think? That is much more difficult to provide than just expressing your frustration.
Inshallah. That's why we have been discussing about theology. We have technologies. We have AI nowadays. We have ChatGPT that we hope that our new and young generations would take this advantage of to make full use of it, to gain more knowledge, especially. And to close our discussion today, what do you think? How is theology addressing the moral and ethical issues brought up by technological advances like AI itself?
So look, AI is going to be a game changer. Artificial intelligence is the writing of algorithms, and these algorithms can also learn. So so the big change is LLM, large language, modules, right? Where these LLMs can absorb a lot of materials and writing, especially in the exact sciences. If they download and they can absorb all the scientific papers, normally what would take billions of dollars and dozens of years to, for instance, find a vaccine. Nowadays, what is happening is, with AI, with a couple of $1,000s, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and over several months, you can begin to find vaccines, because the computer can generate the algorithms and develop those things. In the questions of the availability of knowledge, AI might not be so good in the creative aspects, how to think creatively about a solution.
Not humane enough. I mean,
and the big thing about human beings is the question of consciousness, that we have certain kind of consciousness. There are people who say that artificial intelligence also develops consciousness of a certain kind. But what I'm trying to say is that we have to think of this as an opportunity, but we also should be cautious about some of the downsides of this, right? Some of the downside could be that people get lazy. They ask ChatGPT to give them answers. And I've done some experiments with ChatGPT, and it doesn't give me the best answers, because it can only give me stuff that it knows. It doesn't know everything. Okay, so I think what we need to do is to make sure that human beings, the human mind, is constantly challenged. Because if we challenge the human mind, that we will become creative, and perhaps that creativity can then be downloaded into the various knowledge databases that AI utilizes. Because AI is dependent on data. In the same way that oil was the remedy for the Industrial Revolution. Okay, data is now going to be the main source of the next phase of the information revolution, right? And together with AI, if we get into quantum computing is going to be processing terabytes of information in seconds, because what is going to be, it's going to use the atom itself to now process information. It's no longer going to be a bit, but it's the atom itself. This computer is going to look different. This is going to make it even faster. But I think that we should keep an open mind on these issues and study these issues carefully, and not shut down and create. Because in the past, what we have done, we have say organ transplantation first haram, then we learn more. They say it's okay. Genetic engineering the same. These issues like emerging technologies do not require fatwas. It requires research, and you must not make a judgment immediately. There's something in the Islamic tradition that says, I don't know the answer, let's do tawaqquf. Let's pause. Let's read more. Let's do more research. Let's find out more. Okay? Imam Malik, a man came all the way from the North Africa to Imam Malik with 96 questions. Malik only answered them 3 questions. And he said, I don't know about all that. La adri. La adri is a very good virtue to say, I don't know. Wait until the information is in. So that is humility. So we need humility in these issues too. Okay. So I think these are important issues that Muslim societies are confronting, but we need to do that. And you had a concern in some of the questions that you sent me, how are values passed down to future generations? Values are not things that just drop down. Values mix with the societies. So as your society changes, the values will be modulated, right? Okay. And some, as the examples I gave you earlier, that before we talked about slavery and be good to slaves, but nowadays we say we don't even want to think about slavery anymore, right? And we don't want to discriminate against people on the basis of whether they're male or female and so on. So these are issues that we need to pay attention to. And I think that we need to be more positive in our approach to things. There's a lot of people who are worried about Islamophobia. Islamophobia will evaporate if Muslims are powerful, if Muslims have abilities, if Muslims have capacity. But if you don't have capacity, the world is going to mess around with you. So the way to stop Islamophobia is to build capacity, to be out there in the world, to be the best researchers in science and engineering in every field, but especially in the field of religious thought. We need to be creative. That's how Islamophobia is stopped.
Right.
Inshallah.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much, Professor, for joining us today and
Ebrahim
our
Moosa.
discussion on effect, technology and fatwas, theology, law, and the person. I hope to see you again, inshallah, next time for
Take care,
further
Prof.
discussion.
Thank you very much for your kind
See you again, inshallah.
questions, and I look forward to see you again.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih juga sahabat yang bersama kita hari ini dan terus setia bersama kami di Mana Pagi Radio IK.